I felt it the moment the plane descended, like my lungs finally remembered how to work. For the first time in a year, I wasn't bracing for another midnight conference call or mentally converting time zones in my head. No inbox exploding, no regulatory deadlines, no glass office walls in Seattle reflecting a version of myself that always looked tired. Just mountains, space, silence. I had spent 12 straight months working for an international pharmaceutical company, managing clinical trial logistics across continents. My days blurred into nights. My nights became early mornings. Even when I slept, my phone stayed on the nightstand, face up, waiting to light up with someone else's emergency. So, when I turned my rental car toward the mountains near Jackson Hole, Wyoming, I felt something loosen in my chest. This cabin was the reason I survived that year. I bought it 3 years earlier with money from my grandmother's inheritance. She'd been very clear about it too. "Don't buy something to impress people, Megan," she'd said, squeezing my hand. "Buy something that makes you feel safe." The cabin was exactly that. 2 acres of pine forest, a narrow dirt road that most GPS systems barely recognized. No neighbors, no noise. Just a small wooden structure I had restored myself. One room at a time, one paycheck at a time. Every shelf, every chair, every kitchen cabinet had been chosen deliberately, slowly, with care. This was my place. My plan was simple. 2 weeks offline, no social media, no work email. I had mailed a box of novels ahead of time, stocked the fridge with basics, and mapped out hiking trails that wouldn't see tourists for another month. I wanted sore legs, quiet meals, sunsets instead of screens. I was already imagining the smell of pine when I turned onto the final stretch of road, and that's when my stomach dropped. The gate was open. I slowed instinctively, my foot easing off the gas as my brain scrambled for explanations. Wind maybe, a fallen branch, wildlife. But I always locked it. Always. And I had the only key. My pulse picked up as the tires crunched over gravel. I scanned the tree line, the clearing, the cabin roof peeking through the pines. Everything looked normal. Until I saw the car. A silver SUV sat parked exactly where my space should have been empty. I recognized it instantly. I had helped make the down payment on that car 2 years ago, after my younger sister Brianna called me crying, saying her latest business idea had collapsed and she just needed one small favor. My hands tightened around the steering wheel. "No," I whispered, even as I pulled up beside it. Brianna lived in Boulder. She had no reason to be here, no permission, no invitation. We hadn't spoken in almost 4 months, not since our last phone call ended with her asking for money again, and me, for the first time in my life, saying no. I sat there for a long second, listening to the engine tick, my heart thudding too loud in my ears. The cabin looked wrong as I walked toward it. There were flower boxes under the windows, fresh ones, bright red geraniums I had never planted. A new welcome mat sat by the door, cheerful and completely out of place against the rustic wood I loved. My fingers trembled slightly as I reached for my key. Before I could use it, the door opened. Brianna stood there barefoot, wearing yoga pants and one of those oversized sweaters she liked. She held a coffee mug in her hand. My mug. Her blonde hair was twisted into a messy bun, like she'd just rolled out of bed. She smiled at me, wide, relaxed, almost amused. "Oh my God," she said lightly. "You're home early." I stared at her, my brain refusing to catch up with what my eyes were seeing. "I thought you weren't coming until June," she continued, stepping aside and gesturing into the cabin. "Come in, you must be exhausted." I walked past her in a daze. It smelled different inside. The living room was mostly the same, but the details were wrong. A throw blanket I'd never seen draped over the couch. Magazines on the coffee table I didn't subscribe to. Framed photos on the mantle, Brianna with people I didn't recognize, smiling like this was her house. "What are you doing here?" I finally asked. My voice sounded calm. Too calm. "Oh," she said casually, taking a sip of coffee. "I've been staying here for a bit. It just made sense, you know? This place was empty, and it would be such a waste to let a cabin like this just sit unused." She smiled at me again. Like nothing about this was wrong. The shock didn't hit me all at once. It crept in slowly, the way cold does when you step into deep water and don't realize how far down you've gone until your chest tightens. As I stood there in the doorway, Brianna moved like she belonged, like I was the guest. She reached past me and closed the door. the soft click of the lock echoing far too loudly in the small space. "I made coffee," she said brightly, lifting the mug in her hand. "You always look half dead after long trips." That mug had a small crack near the handle. I'd kept it anyway. It felt ridiculous that I noticed something so small while my entire reality tilted. I took a few steps into the living room. The floorboards creaked under my boots, familiar, but everything else felt off. A throw blanket in a loud geometric pattern lay across my sofa. On the coffee table sat glossy lifestyle magazines I had never bought. On the mantel, right where I used to keep a framed photo of my grandmother, were pictures of Brianna laughing with strangers, arms slung around them like this place had always been hers. "When did you get here?" I asked. "Oh, a while ago," she shrugged. "Things got complicated with my rental, and you were overseas, so—" She waved her hand. "It just made sense." I turned slowly, looking at her. "You moved into my cabin." She smiled, as if amused by my choice of words. "I wouldn't say moved in. I've just been staying here." Without waiting for a response, she hooked her arm through mine and tugged gently. "Come on, there's something I want to show you." The pit in my stomach deepened. She led me down the short hallway toward the kitchen, chatting as we walked. "Honestly, Megan, it was such a waste leaving this place empty. This cabin is beautiful. You weren't even here to enjoy it." My jaw clenched. "That doesn't give you the right." "Oh my God, relax," she interrupted lightly. "You're going to love this." She pushed open the kitchen door with a dramatic flourish. For a moment, my brain refused to process what my eyes were seeing. The kitchen was gone. Not messy, not rearranged. Gone. The warm pine cabinets I had sanded and refinished myself were replaced with stark white units that looked like they belonged in a showroom. The butcher block counters I'd saved for months to afford were gone, replaced by cold gray quartz. The deep farmhouse sink I'd hunted down at an estate sale had been swapped for a sleek, modern basin. Even the backsplash, the hand-painted tiles I'd brought back from Lisbon, had vanished, replaced by generic white subway tile. I stopped breathing. "Isn't it gorgeous?" Brianna said proudly, running her hand along the counter. "I mean, the old kitchen was so dated. This just makes everything feel clean, elevated." I stared at the space, my chest tight, my ears ringing. "What did you do?" "I renovated," she said, as if that explained everything. "I even got a really good deal, $55,000. The number slammed into me like a punch. $55,000, I repeated slowly. She nodded, already moving toward the coffee machine. "And look at this. $2,000, but totally worth it. It froths milk like a real cafe." "Brianna," I said sharply, "where did you get the money?" She didn't look at me right away. She adjusted the settings on the machine, humming softly, stretching the silence just long enough to make my skin crawl. "I used your credit cards," she said finally, turning around. The room spun. "You did what?" "Don't freak out," she said quickly. "I knew you'd want to update the kitchen eventually anyway. And with your job, come on, you can afford it. Think of it as an investment." My hands trembled as I gripped the back of a chair. "You used my credit cards, without asking." She crossed her arms, her tone shifting. "Grandma left money to both of us, Megan. You got more because you're older. That doesn't mean you get to hoard everything." "This is my house." "Our house," she corrected. "Family shares." The words landed like something breaking. I looked around at the space I had built, curated, protected, and realized this wasn't just about money. She hadn't just taken my kitchen. She had taken my sense of safety. And she was standing there, smiling, as if I should be grateful. I forced myself to breathe. Slow, controlled. The way I had learned to do during crisis calls at work, when everyone else panicked and I was the one expected to stay clear-headed. I needed facts before I lost my temper. "How did you get my credit card information?" I asked. Brianna rolled her eyes, already irritated that I wasn't backing down. "You left paperwork in the desk drawer the last time I visited. I figured it was smart to keep it handy. For emergencies," she added quickly. "And this was an emergency." "An emergency renovation?" I said. "My mental health," she snapped. "Boulder was destroying me. I needed space, quiet, and this place was empty." The word empty hit something raw. I had been gone, yes, working myself to exhaustion. But empty didn't mean available. Empty didn't mean unowned. Empty didn't mean free for the taking. I looked at her and realized something cold and clarifying. This hadn't felt wrong to her at all. "How long?" I asked. She hesitated, just a fraction of a second. "Enough." "How long have you been here, Brianna?" She crossed her arms, defensive now. "Since January." January? I had left for Seattle at the beginning of January. "You moved in the moment I left," I said quietly. "You weren't using it," she shot back. "What was I supposed to do? Be homeless?" The familiar guilt tried to rise. The trained response. The older sister instinct that had rescued her from consequences over and over again. This time, I didn't let it. "You need to leave," I said. "Today." She laughed, sharp and disbelieving. "You can't be serious." "I am." Her face crumpled instantly, switching tactics. Tears welled up. Her voice softened. "Megan, come on. I have nowhere to go. I let the condo go. I've been living here for 5 months. I have rights." "You don't," I said. "You're not a tenant. You're a squatter. And you committed credit card fraud." The words felt heavy, but they were true. Her eyes flashed. "You wouldn't dare." "Sai, I'll give you 3 hours," I said. "Pack your things. Leave the key. If you're not gone by tonight, I call the police." I didn't wait for her response. I walked down the hallway, my hands shaking now, needing to see the full extent of what she had done. The bedroom door was open. My bedroom was unrecognizable. Her clothes filled the closet I had custom-built myself. Expensive skincare bottles crowded the bathroom counter. The bed had been replaced with designer linens that probably cost more than my monthly rent in Seattle. In the second bedroom, my office, I found stacks of receipts, shopping bags, electronics, furniture invoices. I opened a drawer and froze. Credit card statements, my statements, charges going back months, furniture, restaurants, clothing, spa treatments, outdoor equipment, a hot tub installation I hadn't even noticed yet. I sat down hard in my desk chair, my vision narrowing as I did the math. This wasn't $55,000. This was over 90. And then I noticed what was missing. The folder where I kept copies of my passport, my birth certificate, tax documents. I stood slowly, my stomach hollow. She hadn't just stolen money, she had stolen my identity. I walked back into the living room. Brianna was standing there, watching me carefully now. "You need to be gone when I get back," I said. "I'm going into town." "For what?" she asked, her voice tight. "To talk to a lawyer, to freeze my accounts, and to file a police report." Her face went white. "You're overreacting." "No," I said. "I'm finally reacting." I grabbed my bag and headed for the door. "Where are you going to sleep?" she called after me. "You're really going to do this to your own sister?" I turned back one last time. "You stopped being my sister when you decided to steal from me." I drove down the mountain too fast, my hands clenched on the steering wheel, the cabin disappearing behind the trees. For the first time in my life, I wasn't choosing peace at my own expense. I was choosing myself. Laura Bennett didn't soften her words. She listened without interrupting, pen moving steadily across her legal pad as I laid everything out. Brianna in the cabin, the kitchen renovation, the credit cards, the missing documents. When I finished, Laura leaned back in her chair and looked at me carefully. "This isn't a family disagreement," she said. "This is identity theft, fraud, unauthorized use of credit. Given the amounts involved, this could easily rise to felony charges." The word felony landed harder than I expected. She continued, calm and methodical. "You need to document everything. Take photos of every alteration to the property. Get copies of contractor invoices if you can. Freeze your credit cards immediately. And if she's been living there, I strongly recommend a restraining order." I nodded, my hands clenched in my lap. "Do you have security cameras?" she asked. The question jolted something loose in my memory. "Yes," I said slowly. "I installed them before I left. Motion activated, cloud storage." Laura's expression sharpened. That could be crucial. By the time I drove back up the mountain, the sun was already dipping behind the trees. The road felt longer, steeper, like it was resisting me. Brianna's SUV was gone. For a brief, foolish moment, relief washed over me. Then I opened the door. The cabin felt hollowed out. She had taken everything she could justify as hers. The expensive coffee machine was gone. So were the new appliances. Half the dishes were missing, including pieces from a hand-painted set my grandmother had given me. Lamps stood useless, bulbs unscrewed and removed. Decorative pillows vanished. A woven rug from Peru was gone. It wasn't random, it was punishment. In the bedroom, the designer linens were stripped from the bed, hangers missing from the closet. In the bathroom, shelves stood bare where hundreds of dollars of products had been. But the office was worse. Drawers yanked open, papers scattered. And the folder, my folder, gone. Passport copies, birth certificate, tax documents. My throat tightened as I realized the full scope of what she had taken. On the bathroom mirror, written in smeared red lipstick, were 4 words. "You were always selfish." My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Hope you're happy. You made your own sister homeless." Then another. "Mom is furious. She can't believe how cruel you are." And then the calls started. My mother's name lit up my screen again and again. Voicemails piled up. I didn't listen to them yet. I couldn't. I sat on the edge of the couch and logged into the security camera system. The footage loaded slowly, each second stretching. January, 3 days after I'd left for Seattle. There was Brianna stepping out of her SUV, unlocking the door with a key she shouldn't have had. Over the following weeks, the cameras captured delivery trucks, contractor vans, furniture shipments, Brianna directing workers like an owner, and then came the clip that made my stomach drop. The office camera showed her at my desk, opening drawers, pulling out papers. She held my credit cards up to her phone and photographed them carefully, front and back. Close-ups of numbers, security codes. There was no accident here, no desperation. This was deliberate. I sent everything to Laura and then to the police. The next day, at the bank, I froze every account and filed fraud reports. The banker was sympathetic, her voice low. "You'd be surprised how often this happens," she said. "Family members who feel entitled." At a coffee shop with reliable Wi-Fi, I pulled my full credit reports. What I found made my hands shake. 3 credit cards I had never opened, all maxed out. A personal loan from 2 years ago, $15,000. Not mine. Multiple hard credit inquiries going back years. This hadn't started with the cabin. It had been going on quietly, methodically, while I trusted her. The total damage, when I added everything together, passed $130,000. I stared at the screen, numb. Laura called me back within minutes of receiving my email. "This changes everything," she said. "This is systematic financial exploitation, not a lapse, not a mistake." I closed my eyes. I had spent years protecting Brianna from consequences, smoothing over her failures, believing love meant absorbing damage. Now I understood the truth. She hadn't just crossed a boundary, she had erased it. And for the first time, I wasn't going to put it back for her. They arrested Brianna on a Thursday morning. I wasn't there when it happened. The detective called me while I was standing in the kitchen, staring at the half-restored cabinets, trying to remember what this room had looked like before everything shattered. "She was taken into custody without incident," he said, at an apartment in town where she was staying. I thanked him and hung up, my hands oddly steady. I thought I would feel relief, or satisfaction, or even guilt. What I felt instead was exhaustion. I went to the first court appearance anyway. I needed to see it with my own eyes. I needed to know this was real. The courtroom smelled like old paper and disinfectant. I sat in the back, my coat folded neatly on my lap, my spine straight. When Brianna was brought in, wearing an orange jumpsuit that looked too big for her, she scanned the room wildly until she saw me. Her expression shifted fast, fear, shock, and then anger. She stared at me like I had done this to her. Our mother sat a few rows ahead of me. She didn't turn around. She didn't have to. I could feel her hatred like heat. The prosecutor laid it all out with a precision that made my stomach twist. The security footage, the forged signatures on contractor contracts, the fake ownership claims, the pattern of spending, small enough to avoid alarms at first, then escalating, the credit cards, the loans, the stolen documents. It wasn't emotional, it was devastating. Brianna's attorney tried to frame it as desperation, mental health, bad choices made under pressure. But the evidence told a different story, a long one, a deliberate one. After the hearing, Brianna wrote me a letter from jail. 4 pages. I read it once. She blamed me for everything, for not helping enough, for choosing my career, for abandoning her. She admitted to using my cards, renovating the kitchen, taking documents, but framed it as necessity, as survival. as something I had forced her into. There was no apology, not one sentence that said, "I hurt you." I folded the letter and set it aside. The most painful realization wasn't the money. It wasn't even the betrayal. It was understanding that Brianna could rewrite reality so completely that she would always be the victim, no matter how much damage she caused. The sentencing hearing came weeks later. When the judge asked if I wanted to give a victim impact statement, I stood. My voice didn't shake. "I protected my sister my entire life," I said. "I helped her financially. I gave her places to stay. I believed that family meant absorbing the cost when someone struggled." I looked at Brianna, who wouldn't meet my eyes. But somewhere along the way, she stopped seeing me as a sister and started seeing me as a resource. She didn't just steal money, she stole my sense of safety, my trust, my ability to feel secure in my own home. I paused. I don't want revenge. I want accountability. Because without consequences, this doesn't stop. And because no one should be expected to sacrifice themselves to keep the peace. The judge sentenced her to prison time and ordered full restitution. My mother cried. Outside the courtroom, she finally confronted me. "I will never forgive you," she said. "You chose this." I met her gaze calmly. "No," I said. "I chose myself. Protecting yourself isn't betrayal, and boundaries aren't cruelty." She turned away. That was the last real conversation we had. Months passed. The cabin slowly became mine again. The kitchen was restored, not exactly as before, but close enough to feel familiar. The pine cabinets returned. The warmth came back. So did the quiet. One evening, I sat on the porch as the sun sank behind the mountains, painting the sky in gold and deep red. The same view that had once promised healing. This time, it delivered. I lost part of my family. That truth still aches. But I gained something I had never fully had before. Safety, peace, and the clarity to know that choosing yourself is not selfish, it's survival. If you've listened to this story from beginning to end, I'd really love to know what you think. Did this story resonate with you? And what kind of stories should I share next? Please like and subscribe to hear more real, powerful stories from women who finally chose themselves.